Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I got 11 CGC 9.8 comic books to invest in on a $300 budget. Yeah, and we had already did a video about $200 budget CGC 9.8 comic books, and I think just over the next few weeks here I want to do like 300, 400, 500, 600 and just do these sort of budget-oriented style of videos. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for all the latest video notifications just to stay on top of all the content. Okay, so I got 11 CGC 9.8 comic books to recommend here on a $300 budget. Yeah, first one is one of my favorites, to be honest. Yeah, it's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures #1. Yeah, and I brought mine out here. I'm lucky enough to have a signed Canadian price variant of this one, so a pretty rare one, but we'll talk about the blue label one today. I think it's just a great collector item, this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures #1 in the CGC 9.8. You do get the first appearance of Bebop, Rocksteady, and Krang. So yeah, classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle villains that I'm really familiar about. But I think the kind of criminally underrated thing about this book is, pretty sure to my knowledge, this is the first time you see the Ninja Turtles in their 4-colored bandanas. This isn't the first time you get Ninja Turtle books in color. I'm talking about the 4-colored bandanas. So I think that's really cool. Like growing up, that's how I knew the Ninja Turtles, as having the 4 colors. And I didn't even know until I really got into the comic book thing that the Ninja Turtles had like just the red bandanas, and even the original issues were black and white. So this one's pretty cool, and you know, the price is definitely trending up there. We'll talk about some of the pricing because having it fit on a $300 budget video, Go Collect has it at $270. But we'll get into some of these recent prices. There's 153 CGC 9.8s in the blue label on the census though, so kind of a 1 of 153 perfect Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures #1 is pretty cool in the 9.8. 43.6% the 9.8 ratio. So not, you know, this was always kind of a cheaper 9.8. It's not a really rare 9.8 for an 80s book. With that 43.6% of all graded copies being 9.8. So let's talk about prices, because Go Collect having it at $270, I was like, oh great, I can throw it on my $300 budget video. But we're kind of pushing the limits here because last 2 auctions that I'm seeing on eBay, one ended at $282 and one ended at $306. Now there's been a couple others that have sold since then. And I think there's a bit of a lack of transparency with eBay's completed listings. I don't know if it's because I'm in Canada or something, but it appears that a couple of these sold for like $450 basically. Like someone was paying that much for one of these just in the last couple days here in the CGC 9.8. So I think that's going to go down as an overpay. Like this one isn't really that rare in the CGC 9.8 for any reason. So I think maybe we're a little bit over budget here with the $300 budget, but this one I think is still worth it, even if you got to pay, you know, a little bit over $300, but with an auction still going for $282. You know, maybe if you're patient here, things cool down in the 9.8 market in general, and you get this one around $282, which I think this one's a pretty great price to have, a pretty great one in the 9.8 to have around that price. Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures #1 in the CGC 9.8, hopefully under 300 bucks. Okay, next one here is a Batman #404. Yeah, year 1, part 1 with this one. This book, I brought one of mine out. I got 2 of them in the 9.8. I got a CBCS 9.8 too. Yeah, this is one of my favorite Batman books of the era. And I talked about this one on a video we did like almost a year ago now about $100 comic books in the 9.8. And yeah, this one of my CGC 9.8s I grabbed for $109. It was in an auction. Like I was pretty vigilant for a while there, searching for these Batman 404s in the 9.8. Grabbed one in an auction for $109. I thought it was a great price then. The Batman movie is coming out, and a lot of people are pumped up about it for sure. This book has heated up along with that. So now you're looking more over $200 in the CGC 9.8 for a Batman 404 right now. Yeah, so this one's one of the more affordable ones on the list. There's 598 CGC 9.8s in the blue label. That's, you know, pretty great. This is a popular one of the era for Batman fans. 28.1%, the 9.8 ratio. Not too bad for a late 80s book, better than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures #1, but you know, not that, you know, a bit of a less rare 9.8 ratio has kept this one pretty affordable, certainly. But with that Batman movie coming, it's sort of a young Batman, so people are really, you know, excited that it's sort of an origin story in year one. Certainly Batman was pretty young, so people are kind of targeting this one. A completed listing I saw on eBay. I think it's a decent price for this one right now, $209.99. So about $100 more than where I was purchasing mine about a year ago, just to give you an idea of how far this book has come. But Batman 404, still a little over $200. Maybe, yeah, I was really thinking about putting this one on the $200 budget video. But one of the cheaper ones on the list here, and just a classic Batman book. Yeah, Origin of Batman, really memorable cover. And Frank Miller, legend on the story, year one, part one. So such a great read. So Batman 404 and the 9.8 is a cool one to have if you're a Batman fan, absolutely. Okay, next one here, an Ultimate Fallout #4 in the second print. Yeah, and I got one of these in the 9.8, luckily. A really cool one, I think. This is the Mark Bagley second print. There's that other second print there with the white cover. That one's kind of, it came from nowhere kind of, and is sort of well collected now as well. But I like this one a little bit better. Really kind of a cool take on the first print, where you can kind of see his face better in this one. And yeah, you kind of tell he's like Hispanic and black. And I think that will be a reason to kind of collect this one over time. A lot of people will have that as a reason to collect this one for sure. And with Ultimate Fallout 4, the first print in the 9.8, there's getting like to be a ton of those on the census, to be honest. I think it's over 2,000 in the Blue Label 9.8 right now. So for this one, 548. CGC 9.8's out there, so a 1 of 548 is kind of better than a 1 of 2,000, but still, yeah, this one is definitely a wanted one, and if you're on a budget and in the 9.8, the Ultimate Fallout 4 first print is getting really expensive, so this one works if you're on a budget. 47.4%, the 9.8 ratio, so nothing too much to write home about the rarity, although that's not too bad for like a modern comic book. This one, you know, it's coming out in the last 10 years here. So another thing about Ultimate Fallout 4 in the second print, the price is really cooling off, you know, quite a bit. There was that sort of Miles Morales fever, I guess you could say, with some rumors about Into the Spider-Verse #2, you know, coming out, and there was that Miles Morales video game too. I think that's kind of when it really peaked, where some of these prices were pretty crazy. I think this one definitely, a couple went over $400 in the CGC 9.8, absolutely, maybe even $500. At that point in time. Cooling off now though. Yeah, I think I saw one of these just go for like, it was like 2.0 something. But seeing a recent completed listing for $247.50 on eBay. There was one that was like $260 something as well. So, you know, maybe a lull there, and it would have been a real nice grab to just get in there and get it really close to 200. But I still think, you know, $250, $275 for this Ultimate Fallout 4 second print is a pretty great buy. Yeah, Miles Morales, this is the one you kind of want if you're on a budget. You know, the first print in the 9.8 is pretty out of reach for most people, I would say. So I think this one will be well collected over time and still under 300. So yeah, hopefully closer to 250 for an Ultimate Fallout 4 second print in the 9.8. Next one's a classic issue, an X Factor #6 in the CGC 9.8. This is a cool one. One of the most classic villains out there for sure. First full appearance of Apocalypse. Cool cover as well. For this one, 962 CGC 9.8s in the Blue Label, a classic key that's really popular, so a lot of people trying to get these graded for many, many years now. 19.6%, the CGC 9.8 ratio, so an under 20 9.8 ratio is getting into a real nice rarity in the 1980s, so yeah, this one's got a good combination of being pretty rare, great first appearance, but like still fitting the $300 budget if you're patient. Kind of pushing it with this one. I think some have went over 300, absolutely. Certainly when that like X-Men Apocalypse movie came out, I think a lot of these kind of blew up to, you know, 400, maybe even more. But seeing some completed listings, Go Collect has the fair market value. I think it's $280. And I saw a completed listing though in an old case for $260, and then yeah, again, occasionally you do see them go for over 300, but under 300 is doable in this one. And it is a classic key. Yeah, big villain, decent rarity in the 9.8 with that 19.6% of all graded copies are CGC 9.8. That's not bad. So X Factor number 6, under $300 still. I think is one to consider. Yeah, certainly there's like a lot of modern villains that are, hot books that are really heating up that are more than $300 in the 9.8. And this is pretty much kind of a villain's benchmark in the 9.8, sort of a value type of villain to buy in a CGC 9.8 comic. Yeah, so X Factor number 6 in the 9.8 is definitely one to consider on a $300 budget. One to recommend. Next one here is Darth Vader number 3. So we'll warp to the modern age here. This is the first appearance of Dr. Aphra. So a big kind of modern first appearance of a Star Wars hero that's got a lot of potential. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, Dr. Aphra really hasn't been in much, a live action movie type of Star Wars stuff yet. So she's a really cool character. This is a popular key too. Definitely, there's been a lot of people sort of liking this book and speculating that, she's almost like the new Luke Skywalker. Like she's got the same looking droids as Luke Skywalker. So there's all that foreshadowing going on. So 1,362 CGC 9.8s in the blue label out there. As I said, like a lot of people really like this one. So there's over 1,000 of them. 65.8% the 9.8 ratio. So this is a modern book, but nothing to really write home in the rarity there for the 9.8 rarity. And it does kind of keep this one pretty affordable. Like when the market lulled, let's call it a year ago now, the 9.8, this one was going for like, you'd see them dip under 150, like 130, 140. And I really thought of getting in there just as almost a value play. But right now, a completed listing on eBay for $263, I think just in the last couple days here for Darth Vader number 3. Maybe right now with the Mandalorian really, being such a big hit and a lot of Star Wars fans coming out of the woodwork. This was one that even, 3-4 months ago, I think was like 200. Maybe that's still somewhat doable, but yeah, I think 263, 250, you're kind of seeing the most recent auctions end. But still kind of a cool one on a $300 budget that has that potential, I think. Yeah, like certainly if they came out with a big Star Wars movie with Dr. Aphra basically playing the next Luke Skywalker type of character, this book would absolutely explode for sure. But yeah, one to recommend though on a $300 budget, absolutely. So next one, I think we're pushing the limits here, the $300 budget, but this is one that I've been, familiar with getting under $300, but it's a Batman Vengeance of Bane special, number 1. Yeah, the origin and first appearance of Bane. I really like this, a 1990s CGC 9.8. So there's 942 of them in the 9.8 blue label, 32.3% the CGC 9.8 ratio. Not too bad for like a 90s book, but nothing, nothing too rare. So yeah, the reason why I kind of included it on the list, because I think most of the completed listings right now on eBay are kind of $325. On Go Collect, they have it at $290. So maybe if you're, really aiming for that Go Collect price and you're patient, you might still be able to get under $300. I have this one. I didn't bring it out, but I have this one, and I paid, I think it was like $225 or $230. And that was about over a year ago. So yeah, this was always a great one that, under $300, absolutely. Batman Vengeance of Bane, such a great villain to get in the CGC 9.8. The first appearance. There was some Bane rumors, and then, the 9.8 market's kind of heating up in general. So this one, right around 300, I still wanted to put it on the list. Yeah, big Batman villain, an iconic Batman villain that, there's not a lot of modern Batman villains that you can get their authentic first appearance, because a lot of those first appearances were in like the 40s and 50s. So, but you can get Bane, so it's a pretty special book, and it's called Bane Special. But I would recommend this one, hopefully under 300, but yeah, maybe even a little bit over 300 if you really want this one in the CGC 9.8 right now. Okay, next one is a Silver Surfer 44. Yeah, this one is, one I've sort of recommended quite a bit on some affordable videos, and this was one I was looking to kind of fit on the $200 budget video, but yeah, these have heated up along with the 9.8 market. Yeah, I think so. Most of the recent completed listings, we'll get into a couple of those in a second. But 274 CGC 9.8s out there in the blue label. And this is an early 90s book. I've always been really surprised at this one where, you know, first Carnage, New Mutants 98, there's like 3,000. And this being the first appearance of the Infinity Gauntlet, you know, you'd think that there would at least be 1,000 of these, like an early 90s book. But it's pretty rare in the 9.8. Yeah, 274. 274 of them in the CGC 9.8 blue label, 23.6%, the 9.8 ratio. Not too bad for an early 90s book, so it's getting pretty rare in the CGC 9.8 specifically. So on eBay, there are 2 completed listings here in the past couple weeks. One was for like $249.99 and one was like $274.99. So, you know, this was one, I had purchased one of mine, and a good example of a sort of range of prices for this issue, but I purchased one of mine during Avengers Endgame, and it was, you know, there was a little bit of hype during that time. It was right when I started the channel, but I wasn't really, you know, right on top of things back then, but I purchased one of mine for about $225 it was. 6 months later, after Avengers Endgame was out of theaters, I grabbed another one for like $152 something. It was a great deal in an auction. And so a great example of like what we always talk about, don't rush out there and buy something in a promotion-filled environment like I did. I paid $225 for one when Avengers Endgame was in theater. They went down to $150, lucky enough to grab another one in the 9.8. But now, about $250, $275, they're back up to that level. And I do like this one just over the long term and for coolness. I like the cover, great 90s colorful cover. And with the Infinity Gauntlet being in all these Avengers movies and Guardians of the Galaxy movies and things like that, I just think long-term this one looks pretty good. It's the first appearance of the Infinity Gauntlet, and kids are going to grow up remembering and being nostalgic and loving the Infinity Gauntlet. So I think this one's got a bright long-term future and just a cool one to hang on to. Hopefully right now you get it even maybe under $250 would maybe even be a kind of a prudent price target. Okay, next one to recommend, an Uncanny XMen 221. Yeah, this is one where, you know, maybe not too rare on the census, which I've always knocked it for a little bit. And this is actually one I was just laying off of, and I ended up picking up a newsstand because I didn't really like the rarity on the census that much. So I thought this is kind of a great one to have in the 9.8 in the newsstand to sort of make up for it maybe not being the most rare CGC 9.8. But first appearance of Mr. Sinister, pretty cool cover, 1,129 in the CGC 9.8 out there. So over 1,000, which is not too bad for just a great villain like Mr. Sinister, one of the best villains. 35.2% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 35.2% of them are CGC 9.8s. Like that's, you know, higher than the Apocalypse book that we just talked about, higher than the Bane book, even though the Bane book is in the 90s. So that's, you know, gives you a little bit of, like, it's not as rare as those books. So that's always one thing I've noticed with Uncanny X-Men 221. Great book though, nonetheless. I do love Mr. Sinister. And right now though, sort of pushing the budget with this one, I think, because they're sort of seem to be mostly going over a little bit over 300, like 305. Some of these auctions are ending at. You are seeing auctions in the past couple months here around 280, 290. So it's definitely doable to get this one under 300. But what I think with this one, in the direct edition specifically, you know, there's maybe a little bit of cooling off to do. Certainly if Mr. Sinister doesn't get into the MCU X-Men movies, which was basically the rumor that brought this one from like $160, $175 up to $300 in price in the 9.8 in about the last 6 months here. So if that doesn't happen, if Mr. Sinister doesn't get into the MCU movies, there might be some cooling off for this one. So that's why I kind of put it on a $300 budget. Like if you're patient on this one, I feel like $275 in the next like 6 months is completely doable whenever this one lulls a little bit. Yeah, Uncanny X-Men 221, first Mr. Sinister. I'm a villains guy. I got one in the newsstand. The newsstand prices right now are just pretty crazy, and I do think I saw a newsstand sell for like $550. So yeah, I paid $250 for my newsstand in the CGC 9.8 about 8 months ago, about 8 months to a year ago maybe it was. Okay, moving on here. Tale of the Teen Titans number 44, the next recommendation here in the CGC 9.8. This is when Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing. It's not the first Nightwing, but when Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing is a pretty great moment in comics, I think. and the origin of Deathstroke, the Terminator, I'm pretty sure too. Cool cover on this one. A great 80s DC key to focus on for sure in the CGC 9.8. There's a 951 9.8s out there, so it's a pretty popular one. 23.5% is the 9.8 ratio, and still kind of happy to see this one not really heat up like over 300 or anything like that, because it's a really classic key. I think it's probably over time has that potential to do really good, especially if there's like a Nightwing, Robin kind of thing in like more mainstream movies kind of thing like that. But in the CGC 9.8, right around 275 is sort of the completed listings I'm seeing on eBay basically in this one. And so hasn't got over 300. I was more used to, about a year ago, I was more used to this one in a 9.8 going for about 225, maybe 250. So it's, yeah, I'm not really seeing that type of price in the 9.8. So this one's heated up a little bit. But I've been on the record as saying Robin books and Nightwing kind of in general are just pretty undervalued in general. Like, there hasn't really been like a Batman Robin movie or anything like that. But if that happened, I think a lot of these Robin books would heat up. And this kind of is in that same area as like first Jason Todd and first Tim Drake and Dick Grayson becoming Nightwing. Really good keys to focus on. But yeah, Tale of the Teen Titans 44 in the CGC 9.8 is a great one on a $300 budget. Hopefully like closer to $250 in the 9.8 would be a good target price to aim for. All right, last two here on the list. Okay, so this one may be pushing the budget a little bit, but I wanted to include it on this one. It's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 51. Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's the first appearance of Jennika, who later becomes the 5th Ninja Turtle. And I had recommended this one on our $100 video, CGC 9.8s, to kind of recommend, like about a year ago I did that video. And yeah, this was one where I grabbed two of my 9.8s. They were under 100. One was like 70 something. And another one was $120 because I got three of them in the CGC 9.8. I always thought this would be a cool one to get with the cool cover too. I really like this first print cover. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 51 now is pretty much going a little over 300. You're seeing some completed listings in the last few months here, a little under 300. The main reason why I decided to add it is because Go Collect has the fair market value right at 300. But I think some of the recent completed listings are like 325, so maybe a little bit over the budget here. But there could be some cool enough to do with this book too. Like if you're patient, right around 275 I think is a pretty great price for this one in the 9.8. There's more getting graded too, which is nice to see. 101 CGC 9.8s in the blue label now. And when I started buying mine, there was like 17 on the census. So yeah, this one I think is really getting more notice now. Rightfully so, I think. 80.2% the 9.8 ratio. So you'd like it to be a little more rare, to be honest, but it's really not for a modern comic book. And yeah, I do think, maybe this one's just heating up with the general market right now. I do think if you're patient here in the next 6 to 12 months, let's call it, whenever that time would be, you can grab this one under $300 in the CGC 9.8. But yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 51. I do like this cover, and first appearance of Jennika, who becomes the 5th Ninja Turtle. And when I was buying them for 100, I thought it was underappreciated, and it's even now, it's certainly not like for Spider-Gwen. It's not that price yet in the CGC 9.8, and being such a pretty big iconic addition to a superhero team like the Ninja Turtles getting a 5th member, I think this one could possibly get up there to, kind of the first Spider-Gwen type of book. You'd like it to be a little more rare in the 9.8, so hopefully more graded, and that 9.8 ratio comes down a little bit. Yeah, lower the better with these 9.8 percentages. On 51, of all graded copies, 80.2% of them are CGC 9.8s. Okay, the last one here, a really cool 90s book that I've been tempted on in the past, certainly. An Incredible Hulk 449. Yeah, this is the first appearance of Thunderbolts. Got to have an Incredible Hulk book in there. Yeah, I really like just, in general, just collecting Incredible Hulk books. I always said, we did an Incredible Hulk video, but just having Hulk being green on most covers, I think that big green Hulk color on all these covers just gives all these covers a great eye appeal, because there's a lot of colors, and Hulk being the main kind of green color is, I think, really eye-pleasing. That's the super simple reason. But Hulk 449 is one of the cooler ones in the 90s, and you can still grab it on a $300 budget. So a 431 9.8s in the blue label out there. 33.3% the CGC 9.8 ratio too. So yeah, similar rarity and looking really similar to Batman Vengeance of Bane on the CGC census, and they're pretty similar in price too. Yeah, so these are pretty two kind of comparable books from a similar era too as well. But a great cover on this one. It's wannable, and having a look on eBay, there's one that just sold for $281. I think closer to $250 might be doable in this one, but you know, I think with the Thunderbolts, what you get is, I think the reason why I haven't really pulled the trigger on this one is I've never really read a Thunderbolts book, and I've always just thought like, oh, like for a team name like the Thunderbolts is just not very creative, maybe. But I've never really been attracted to them. Never really read a book in the 90s as a kid, a Thunderbolts book. So I've sort of held off on this one, but under 300, certainly if you're a Thunderbolts fan, this is the one to get. And just as a 90s 9.8, it's really collectible, and hopefully you get it closer to 250 in the 9.8. I think would be, yeah, a pretty prudent price target for Incredible Hulk 449. All right, that's the full list of 11 CGC 9.8 comics to invest in on a $300 budget. All the full list in the description below if you want to take a quick look. Yeah, this was a really good list. This is still a really, you know, great affordable price range, I think. Tough to sort of match the books with the prices, because, you know, I'll come up with a book and then I'm like, oh, that's like kind of $350 now, and so it's kind of out of budget. So these books are pretty tough to come up with. But yeah, hopefully you got some ideas. And yeah, be sure, because we'll be doing all these budget style videos in the next few weeks here. So if you haven't already, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Yeah, I'd love to have you on our comic book collecting and comic book investing team. Hit the bell for all the latest notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter as well. All the links in the description below for all that. Alrighty, yeah, thanks so much for watching today. Hope you got some ideas. Yeah, these budget videos will be fun to get through over the next coming weeks. But thanks so much for the support. Thanks, team, and I'll see you on the next one.